Greetings, dear ones. I am. Kryon of magnetic service. It's the voice you've been hearing all along. It's the human being you've been hearing all along. Some will say, it has come too quickly. A human being should not be able to make the jump to the other side of the veil this fast. You don't know. The new energy promotes a system that you don't know. It is not like the old days, I will tell you. This is a creator who wants to be found. That is to say, when you take the hand of the higher self, it does not let go. I live with this man, and he knows it. The higher self is even part of the Kryon. That is difficult to explain, and so is yours, dear human being. There are those here who say it's not real. There are those here who sit in the chairs, say this is the man speaking, this is the one who is pretending to channel. So let's get to it. In this space, I am creating energy with your allowance that is going to fill this, the space between your chairs, with the soup of energy, which is the love of God. And I'm inviting into this place right now, with your permission, all of those in the group that is you, those you have loved and lost, those before you were born that you think you don't know are here. And in just a few minutes, the energy is going to shift in this place, and then I'll ask you if it's real. And you'll know that this is the voice from the other side of the veil, linearized for you through the man who sits in the chair. And it's all done through the process of what we call love for humanity. It is all done so that you will hear things you should hear, in order to help you move through these things, dear family, which you call humanity. There are those here who say, who would authorize such a thing called channeling? It is not sacred. They'll say it is not the way God talks to humanity, and I will tell you, it is the way God talks to humanity. It always has been. Again, I will say what I have said many times before. Again, I will say this to you, that all the scriptures on the planet, no matter who wrote them, have all been written by humans, all of them. God did not write anything. Humans wrote everything. The most sacred scriptures you can imagine, the ones that are revered by billions on the planet, written by human beings under the influence of spirit, and that's called channeling. And now you see it live, and therefore it may not have the profundity that it does when you see it in history, or when you read the words that were given thousands of years ago from the prophets and those, the apostles and the disciples. Well, let me tell you something, maybe it will in 100 years, 200 years. And you get to see it live. We do this all the time. Part of the energy shift on this planet is that this is becoming more common. But it is still sacred. For it is the core sacredness of you that we speak of. If you have been in the presence of Kryon before, oh, by the way, the room is starting to adjust. Some of you just felt that one. Do you know who it is sitting next to you yet? Some of you do. Because you've allowed it. Some of you do. Oh, humans. Oh, if you had the grand picture. I know who you are. I know your name when you're not here. This is such a small part of us. This human experience, such a small part of who we are. You and I. I'll speak to your higher self, you and I. Watch the earth be created. You and I have been on other earths before. You've heard words in other languages before. You've been other shapes before. This is not new to you, dear one. But you don't remember. You're not supposed to remember. But inside, there is a knowing. There's an intuitive knowing that you are an old soul and that I'm right. Let me take you for a moment to the potential of your last breath, dear human being. And what will you think then? Your last breath, you see, there is not one in here who is new. Not one. All of you have been here before. I'm speaking to a choir of old souls. Everyone, even the unbelievers. What happens at your last breath? I'll tell you. When you give up the ghost, as they say, and that human part of you starts to dissolve and give itself back to the dirt, as they say, the collection that you used to be before you got here starts to come together. In 3 earth days it will be complete. A trip to the cave of creation occurs where you give up the crystalline. And all that you ever were and everything you learned becomes a ring, seemingly on a crystal, like the ring of a tree that tells the crystal who you were. It becomes part of the earth. It never leaves the earth. And everything you learned and everything you did stays here. And then you join me. We have a celebration. You start to hear the music again. I've spoken of this. Each one of you knows of what I speak. The music is always playing on the other side of the veil. On my side, even when I'm here speaking to you, it plays to me. I call it music for you. I've linearized an energy which is always around me, which is the composite of God. It is beautiful. It is what some of you get in a sleep state, is what makes you breathe easier. It's what makes you feel loved. The room starts to heat up even more than it should, because there's more here than there was a few moments ago. Oh, the message is not necessarily that profound today. I'll do something I don't always do. We'll talk about current events. We don't always do that. But some like that, and so that is why I've told my partner to transcribe it. Depending upon the energy here, will depend upon whether or not the equipment works today. Sometimes it simply stops. It simply stops because the circuitry cannot take the profundity of the love of God. Hasn't been designed that way yet. And here we are in a circle. A continuous circle. When I see you, I see all of your lives together and the potentials of your own futures. I see those who started humanity. There's a shaman in the room who's just awakening, who is starting to see his shamanic energy. And it's taken a long time. He knows who he is. There are other old souls in this room who have no concept of what is in the rings of their crystal. I'll speak of that in a moment. In fact, I'm going to give you 6 energies, and that will be the last one. Number 1, let us speak of current events. Something is happening right now you should know about. Current events, very, very current, right below your feet. Oh, not right below, but to me it's instantly below, is the magma of the earth, the core of the earth. That is to say, the center, which is molten, is slowing down. If you look in the right places, you'll see this in your news. It's slowing down. This is creating the lessening of the magnetic grid. That is to say, it is starting to decrease in its gas. It is measurable. Scientists can measure it. It is happening right now. It is part of the shift that we speak of. It is part of the new year, 2008. We told you it was coming, and here we are in the 7th month Number 7 is a sacred number. You know that, don't you? And if you've done your numerology and you've looked in what we have said, you would expect it now, and here it is. It is a continuation in the physical properties of the planet that we told you would exist. It is appropriate. Do not fear it. There are those who say you're headed for a magnetic flip. Indeed you are. The potential is that it will not be in your lifetime, but eventually it will take place. If you expect it, there will be no chaos. In the past, it has hovered at a zero energy for hundreds of years before the flip. It will not this time. But the chances are it will not be in your lifetime. It responds to your consciousness. The very reason the magnetic grid is growing less is so that the distance between you and the veil will be minimized. This is a way of saying that the communications to your cellular self, that is your DNA, your memory itself, your crystalline, is becoming grander and greater because the veil is becoming limited. All of this to say the tools are growing. It's got to be this way. You're headed for a vibration of the planet like it's never seen before. You're headed for a 2012 experience, the beginning of the planting of the seeds for a vibrational increase in the planet. It is not an accident that you're going to be here. Dear human being. There are those who have said, well, what do we do about it? And the answer is, you are it. Just be. Continue the work you're doing. It is not an indictment for you to change. It is not fearful information that the earth is going into a higher vibrational rate. If I had any advice at all for you, I would say to you, let your children go. Let them be what they are. Watch what they think and design your teachings around what they want and not what you want. And you'll be better off for it. I'll give you advice all the way through these current events. I always do. That was number 1. The magnetics are changing. Even today, right now, couldn't be more current. Perhaps you'll even read about it. Happening as you sit here. Not in the future. Right now. Next month, a grand experiment takes place. The largest machine on Earth comes online studying the smallest things that exist. Things that are invisible. And we speak now of the atomic accelerator in Switzerland. Current events. There are many who've said, this is dangerous. It is not. No more energy will be studied there than is present in the barrage of cosmic energy that hits the earth every moment of every second. All they are doing is creating the energy in a controlled way so that they can study it, because they cannot study it when it's random. They use matter and antimatter. They use protons and antiprotons. And they speed them up to 90% or more than the speed of light and crash them into each other. And the biggest experiment that's ever done. Let me tell you what the potentials are. And remember, you heard it here first. What they're looking for is interdimensional energy, and they will find it. Because they're looking. What they're looking for is what they'll get. And let me tell you the profundity of what you're about to discover within this next decade. They will rewrite the scenario of how the universe started. The Big Bang never was. It is a three-dimensional explanation of an interdimensional attribute. Universes are created all of the time through interdimensional shift. And when one dimension literally collides with another, you get all of the attributes that you describe as the Big Bang. In 3D, you had many scientists prove what they felt was the Big Bang theory's attribute that showed it truly existed. They found the residual of what they thought was proof. Names like Hubble and others. And here's what we're going to tell you, that if you're going to think in 3D, that's what you're going to get. But even the Big Bang theory had to be interdimensional at its beginning. For everything traveled faster than light. Everything happened all at once. Today, that would have been the attribute of a quantum event. And that's what this laboratory will discover. Where you're about to see the residual of an interdimensional collision. It's everywhere. Once you can start to see the dimensions that are invisible, or at least see the attributes that they trace in the explosions that they're going to see, it'll be obvious. All of this to say to you in this cryptic way that this particular experiment is safe, this particular experiment is a long term, and you're actually going to see interdimensionality at its best. That was number 2. I'm going to rewind time for a moment. I want to go back 10 years. Because I sat in front of you then and I gave you information about your energy crisis. And now you're in it. So I will now explain yet again some things that you can do about it. I'm going to give you the same information I gave you before. For those need to hear it now, who did not hear it before, and see it now, who did not see it before. This particular message has the potential of hitting the ears of someone who you would say in 3D is abundant. That is to say, they can make things happen because they have the purse strings to do so. You would call it deep pockets. And so I challenge the one that hears this with deep pockets. For this will only make you more abundant. There are 2 energy sources on this planet which have always been there, which are free. Free. And the technology to claim them has been developed. And they are free. Listen. Number 1. You wonder why the moon is there, don't you? Kryon, why do we have a moon? I'll tell you why you have a moon. So that you can power your cities. And no one has ever thought of it. The moon gives you motion of water on a timetable that has never changed for centuries. It gives you hundreds of thousands of tons of push-pull energy for free. Always there, where most of your large cities are. The waves and the tides provide the power for Earth. It'll provide the power for every single city you can build from now till the day the Earth is no longer. There is no limit to the amount of electricity that you can provide yourselves, even to the degree of plugging in your cars. And it's free. And it's free. All you have to do is to build the apparatus that will contain it. And you have it. You know how to create push-pull energy, whether it be a paddle wheel or a float. All of this has been designed. There are 3 cities currently on the Earth that derive most of their power from tides. And they're in the north, and they're not in this country. They already have the technology to power your cities, if you allow it to be. And it's free. And you don't have to burn any oil for it. And you don't have to burn any coal for it. And you don't have to take anything from Gaia for it. Let Gaia push and pull its way to a freedom from the sources that you have now. And we say it yet again. It is here. It always has been. It's not going away. The second one, a little harder, but just as obvious. You have many ways of creating power. One of the most complex and difficult to understand and build is the nuclear power plant. And all you have done when you've finished is to create a steam engine. For all it does is create heat. For you then to create steam. For you then to create a generator which moves to create electricity. It is therefore a glorified steam engine. There is another glorified steam engine called the magma of Earth. Everywhere you drill, it gets hot the further you go down. Did you think about that? If you want heat, all you have to do is drill for it. Now, this is difficult because you have to go down a long way. It becomes more difficult because there are byproducts that are involved. The technology must be developed to create this heat, to tap the heat, to make a steam engine that's forever. Forever. Start by building them in the hot spots. The hot spots are defined as those places on the earth where the magma is closer to the surface. How about starting at the Pacific Rim, for instance, where all the volcanoes are, for instance, and where many of your largest cities are, for instance. And you will find all the power you need to create steam is right below your feet. Is it worth it to invest in this? That's up to you. How much longer do you wish to extract pieces and parts of the earth, burn them up and put them in the atmosphere? And what is that worth to you? And so we say it as clear as we've ever said it to you. From the other side of the veil is that the power has always existed. It's existed for you to create electricity, to power your cities, to power your vehicles, and it has always been free. No byproducts at all. And that was number 3. Number 4, we have some advice about the weather. It's not going to get better. And if you sit and wish for it, that is not going to make it better. We have explained it before, we'll say it again. You're in a water cycle that is profoundly set to create a mini ice age. And it may seem odd to you that it gets hot before it has to get cold. If you will look into your geology records, you'll find the exact same thing. You didn't have the records you had then in the 1400s, and it happened then. And you survived it then. So we say to you, the winds will return. And our advice is to prepare for this by creating a situation where you acclimate to the new weather. You may build differently. You may build in different places. But the admonishment is this: don't be surprised when it returns. It will return. Don't be surprised when the levees break again south of you, because they will. You'd be much better off to move the dirt around and build on higher ground. And that is smart. We'll see if it happens. What are you saying, Kryon? I am saying that human beings can adapt, and they have in the past, and you can now. If you start thinking smarter, you adapt for the weather changes. Take charge of how you affect it, not how it affects you. That was number 4. Number 5 and number 6 are a lot more esoteric. And that's why you came, isn't it? Number 5, the energy of this planet is shifting. It is shifting greatly, just like we said it would. Humans are thinking in a different fashion. Many of them are starting to have understandings and epiphanies, even about science, new thought about how things work. We told you they would. Those who will never be esoteric are giving you esoteric information, and they're calling it science. Discoveries are being made that will lead to interdimensional thought. Science is being rewritten as to what is real and what is not. And all of this is in line with what we told you were the potentials of this planet. Now, how does that reflect into current events? You're on the cusp of something, and I will tell you what it is. Dear humanity, you can have peace on earth. And there will be gyrations that you will go through in the process of learning what you want and what you don't want. But in this year, and especially next, in 2009, there are some potentials for you to watch for. Remember, you heard it here first. It's an 11 year. 11 numerologically has many kinds of meanings. What it means to you in old numerology doesn't matter. What it means, however, is that 11 is the number of this age. We told you that when we showed up. In 1989, I gave you in the first transmission, in the first book, the meanings of 11. And here you are coming up to an 11 year yet again. Only this one is right before. The only 11 you're going to get before 2012. That ought to be significant. It's the only 11 with this energy. That ought to be significant. Here's what I'm going to tell you. Watch for the young people of this planet to make differences in this next year. Differences you don't expect. And one of the biggest is the overthrow of dictators. This is the potential that the chest-pounding dictators of this earth are on their way out. And they will not be replaced by other dictators. The beginning of a shift of consciousness of what leadership means to government. Of what ordinary human beings are going to expect from their leadership. In an old energy, there was an expectation of government in many lands that you simply tolerated. And without it there would be chaos, so whichever landed in your land was acceptable. That is an old energy concept, for it led to those who would be in control without integrity. That's going to shift. It's going to shift in your own land as well. For human beings are going to start to expect leadership with integrity. That is new. Watch for it. 2009, there's a potential for a major shift in the country, which I'm not going to mention. And it's going to be caused by the young people of the country. Those who you would never feel would even care are going to rise up and make a difference. Watch for it. And when you see it, Don't look at the news and say, this is bad. Don't look at the news and say, look at those who died. Don't look at the news and see it that way. I want to tell you, there are those who have come to this planet just so they can be part of that. There are those that come to the planet just so they can be part of it and come home and come back and do something even greater. I want to tell you, the overview of this is far grander than you think. Congratulate those who have decided to pass on for this reason, for they've made a shift that is heroic. And look at what they do for their home country. For there will be some of that as well, potentially. That is what we see. The whole planet is involved in this one. It really will change the future, you know. Finally, number 6. Personal potential. And we'll make this one short, although there'll come a time when it is not short. Your DNA is changing. It is changing because of the magnetic influences that are beginning to change around it. This is what we spoke of when we first came here. I call myself the magnetic master. That is a three-dimensional linear term to get your attention to what's going on. My group moved the magnetic grid because you allowed for it. You don't understand what human consciousness does. Human consciousness is a demand, an instruction set for those forces which are esoteric around this planet to move physical things from the consciousness that develops from your thought. It's backwards than what you think. There are those on the earth wondering what God is doing, never understanding it's what they're doing. The personal potential is going to rise very significantly. Potential. Nothing happens to you unless you ask for it. The ability to rewrite DNA, the ability to change your attributes that you came in with, you thinking above the cellular level, being able to claim pieces and parts of the Akash. That means that which you were, which is part of your own crystalline crystal in the cave of creation, can be mined. That means that you can go back and pick up the best parts of you. And it's about time, for that is what we see. We see you as an entire human string. That is the core higher self of all the lifetimes you've ever lived. That's what we see when we see you. We don't see your life now. We see the old soul. We see who you've been, what you've learned. We know how full the spiritual jar is based upon all of the things that you have ever studied in all the lifetimes you've ever had. That's what's in your DNA. And that's what's accessible. Very accessible. When you start pushing on the door, don't be surprised if the door pushes back a little. To some it's scary. It's part of the new way. A cooperation with God that even shouts that you're part of the system. Oh, human being, you're not just a human being looking to God for something. You are part of God. You are my partner in this. You always have been. That has been the message of Kryon. That is the message of Kryon today. More profound it becomes, more profound it is. And we're about ready to leave. But not before we remind you of who sits next to you. There are those listening to this message that are not in your time frame. If you'll allow me for a moment to speak to them. You sit there and you're listening, some of you, most of you, alone, to this message. And you're thinking to yourself, well, this happened in the past. Isn't it sweet? Isn't it nice? I think I'll write some of these things down. You're thinking to yourself, well, I want to tell you something. You're involved right now. For in the very aspect of you having the intent to listen to this, you have created an energy that allows you to be surrounded by those you've loved and lost. by those in other lifetimes that continue to surround you as what you call your guides. There is a lot going on right now around you, listener. You are not just tuning into something that happened in the past. And I'm talking to you personally. You know who I'm talking to. And you ought to feel it right now. Because I know the potential that you're listening. And you are. Such is the way quantumness works. That we have the ability to see things out of time. But the potential existed for you to listen, and you are. And I will tell you, it is no accident that you're here with your ears. Any more than it's an accident that there are those here in this time frame with their bodies to sit in the chairs. It's a stretch, isn't it? Human being to become interdimensional. But some of you are learning very well. It is the love of God that surrounds you right now. That's what you're feeling. All of you. Those in this time frame, those in the others. You see, the Creator wants to be found. And that's what you are learning in this age. There's a cooperation. There's a partnership. Not worship. Because we're family. Dear human. And so it is that we say that there has been a dispensation, even right now, of allowance for belief that such things could even begin to be real. And they are. Especially the one that says, I've been washing your feet, because some of you have felt it. These words are sacred. They're the same energy that all of the other scriptures did. They may not be written in the same way. They may not reach the same masses that they did. But you heard them. And they went into you. So that today you could feel the love of God. And recognize home. So be it. And so it is.
Greetings, dear ones. I'm Kryon of Magnetic Service. You are all known to me. And as I say the words, you interpret the word me. To have a figure with a face, to be some kind of an angelic energy, perhaps, and you'd be right. Except that no one has ever defined angelic energy. And if they did, and if we did, it is the soup of God. If you could see God, you would be seeing every piece of matter that exists. If you could see God, you would see the energy of love permeating every single space in the universe. If you could see God, it wouldn't be singular, dear ones. You can't count the pieces of soup, dear ones. Even at the basic level of soup, even at the atomic level, you'll find it's filled with space. And that's love. So how can I come to you in the best way possible and speak? And the answer is, I become Kryon. I become a figure of an angel. I become paintable to the artists, composable to the musicians. I become as singular as I can, so you will relate. But I am from that which is the great central sun. And that is the expression. For the sun is the metaphor of life for you. For all things emanate from there. The metaphor of God from the center, you'll find everywhere. It's the center of creation, of thought, of love, and it is great. And therefore I am the essence of what you would call creation. And so are you. And the difference between us, dear ones, is that right now I am looking at family who is in corporeal bodies. And most of you is not here. It's with me on the other side of the veil. We've explained that before. Your core soul energy splits when you are born and comes back together when you ascend. And therefore, human being, you are in several places at the same time. But while you are here, there are always questions and puzzlements. And the 3D portions of your mind want to work it all out. Who is talking? How does it work? What does it mean? So right now, I'm going to ask you, old soul, to set aside the three-dimensional parts of you as best you can and acknowledge what is here and what is happening. 23 years ago, I came into my partner's life to talk about right now. This is the last organized, scheduled, and structured channel of the year. Tomorrow there will be channeling, but it's different. This is the last one that will be recorded and transcribed of the year in this fashion. And so I want to give the message called the last 18 years. But I have to start with you. I'm talking about the ones in here with me now. The energy that you create during this message will help those listening and reading later. What do you think of that statement? And if you say, well, Kryon, how does that work? In a timeless energy called quantum, it means that anyone listening to this message, no matter when on earth, is listening to it with you in the room. And if, human being, you are quantum in any fashion or form, it means you are part of the energy. Anyone reading these words in a time after this is transcribed will be reading and feeling the energy of those in the room. That's quantum. How do you understand this? How do I explain this? And the answer is I cannot. But some of you in the room are always so ready to say, I don't care. And those are the ones that set the standard. For you understand and realize that the energy is the energy. And that family, you are part of this. The last 18 years. 1987 is really the preparation to the precession of the equinoxes. This is partially a review and a wrap-up, not of the year, but of everything. 1987, there was an event that was described as the harmonic convergence. It set the stage for illumination of the planet. Illumination of the energy that is quantum and truthful about who you are. If you take it next to another 11, you have the symbol of the harmonic convergence. It is the 1111. And it was before what you would call the 36-year window of the precession of the equinoxes that would cause what has also been known as the alignment. Now, this alignment is the end of the long count of the Mayan calendar, and it's astronomy. And the astronomers and the ancients knew it as the result of the wobble of the earth, creating the fact that the sky was always a little different every single night. And even the ancients were able to do the math and realize that it was a 26,000-year alignment. And the alignment starts and stops with the same attribute. When you can look at the center of the galaxy and the sun lines up with it perfectly, this is the start and end point of the wobble. It became known as the precession of the equinoxes. If you look at the sky, and as an astronomer you want to see where it starts and ends the last 36 years, it presents itself through the edge of the galaxy called the dark rift, which is what you call the Milky Way when you look up in the sky. As it precesses through that edge, it takes 36 years. 18 years ago, it began. And now you've reached this part, which is the middle. The solstice is the day where you celebrate it. And then there's 18 years more. Well, it precesses out of that stripe in the sky. And that 36-year window is special. The Mayans saw that. And everything that you have learned about the Mayan calendar falls short of this. They saw the 36 years. And it's so profound that many have seen what they said and said it is the end of time. And it isn't. Why would they say that? Why would it show in such an esoteric calendar that they put together, which even showed the cycles of influence on fractal time? But it looks like the end. Why would it look so barren to those who would look at it in 3D? And the answer is this. So when you get out your new calendar and you paste it on the wall and it says 2013, you're looking at it in 3D, if you could see the colors around it. It's the beginning of time. I'm going to default to something very 3D right now. The favorite tune of my partner. And he knows what it is. It's called It's Time to Say Goodbye. A beautiful ballad sung by a man and a woman about the love they have for one another. The lyrics, it's time to say goodbye. And the first time you hear it, you're struck with what? Why would they be saying goodbye? Why would these two who love each other so much ever say goodbye? And it's such a sad song. Until you look at the intent of the composer, until you find out what was meant by the tune. And then you find it. For the composer will tell you, it's time to say goodbye, not to one another, but to being alone. And your heart resounds with love. For it's a song about unification, of being together for the rest of your life with one you adore. And that's very different, isn't it? And so in 3D, you read the energy of the Mayan calendar, and you say it's the end of all things, and you read doom, and you close the door, and you expect bad things. And part of humanity right now is preparing for the end. But you didn't get it. Here's how it goes. Should you make it to this place, and there was a time when that was questionable, should you make it to this place, and you have, it's time to say goodbye to everything you think is the way things work. There's a unification coming of humanity, of hearts. And it may take generations, dear ones, but you got 18 years to plant the seeds, and that was my message last time. 1987 was before the 18 years. 1994 is when it began. Between 1987 and 1994, I came to see my partner in 89. It took him those years to settle. He calls it the honeymoon period of Kryon. I call it grueling. He's a stubborn man. When I finally convinced him that it was all right to love me, the real information began. You can see the difference between the first book, written in 93, and the second one written in 94. The first one was cryptic. Oh, it told the story. But in 94, he was in love with God. And then things began to happen. But in that period, something else had started. You started to see things around you change. And those who were here know of what I speak. Geopolitical systems of the planet turned around. You started to see the fall of the Soviet Union, who was the nemesis of the United States, and the two of them would have brought you to a conclusion of nuclear war by the millennium. They almost did it in the 60s. It all went away. The prophecies of Revelation had you at war. The prophecies of Nostradamus had you at war. And it didn't happen. What happens, dear ones, when the prophecies of old fall on the floor in front of you because it isn't real anymore? What happens? And I'll tell you, you got to rewrite it. And that's what you're doing now. I came in to see my partner in 89, and I told him that consciousness on the planet would begin to shift. By 1994, the precession of the equinoxes had started. The indigenous of the planet felt it coming. For over 1,000 years, they had predicted it as a decision point of humanity. And the Mayan calendar end count was the place where it may occur. And it is. And these are the things we speak of. The prophecy of the eagle and the condor is simply the prophecy of a balancing planet. Balancing in a way that will create a softer consciousness that thinks better. It thinks in survival, with honor and with love. It thinks differently, for it starts to realize that unification instead of separation is the answer. It starts to try the hardest things that humanity has ever tried, putting unequal economies together, changing the very essence of the way countries work, rewriting banking systems, thinking out of the boxes that were always there before, changing the way government works, allying trade so that you don't necessarily have it all one-sided, and the only side that counts is earth. So when one benefits, the all do. It starts conceptual thinking, where it's not only the individual, it's the individual and everything around the individual. The concept of peace being something that is not only desirable, but the only thing that's civilized. That's the change. And you started to see many things start to move. You came to the millennium shift and nothing happened. Did you notice? And there were those then heading for the hills, building the shelters, arming themselves against their neighbors. Some were expecting the earth to turn upside down, for the poles to shift. You know that won't happen, don't you? Ever. For everything on the planet would be dead if it did. Although magnetics has shifted many times, but the earth never turned over. There are so many who wish to believe the horror, the drama. It's time to say goodbye, they say. And they didn't get it. And the ones in the room and the ones listening to my voice are starting to understand. There is a process beginning, a turnaround that is going to be slow. And some of it is ugly. It's already ugly. For things don't happen in a day. These kinds of energies, we say you mush into them. That is to say, it takes years to set the stage. Sometimes you go backwards a little bit and then forward. It takes generations of thought and evolution of human consciousness to create the final result. And you're only at the beginning of it. And you're going to see a lot of old energy and new energy clashing. And you won't even recognize what it is. Takes us to current events, dear ones. What are you seeing right now as we sit? You're seeing war. You're seeing issues in the Middle East, yet again. And there are those who would say, well, this is the beginning of the end. Right on schedule. Instead of understanding what you truly are looking at. What's going on in Egypt right now? You thought that was settled, didn't you? And it isn't. Why are the people reacting the way they are to the new leader? And the answer is because the new leader has shown himself to be part of the old energy they wanted removed. And they're letting him know. Why did they do this in the first part? What is the reason for such a stable country that you could visit, where tourism is everything, to go into a state of revolt against itself the year before 2012? What is the reason? And I will tell you, dear ones, this is what we're talking about, is that the old energy, as good as you think it was, you see it in the system, you see it in your government. There is objection to the old energy. And if you think it's going to simply repeat itself, you're going to stand up and object. The objection. Another objection is this. They want to choose. I've said this before, they want better schools, better hospitals, they want futures for their kids. That's different. It's time. And isn't it interesting that it coordinates with it's time to say goodbye. Syria is a nightmare. And you don't want to be there. It's everything that you don't want on the earth right now. Manifested, where you can look at it. How do you like it? And you can see it every night on your news. How do you like it? And you don't. And the mothers over there who are watching their children die don't either. I mean, your family's torn apart, hiding, hoping not to get bombed. Never thinking it would happen there. They need your energy and their love. They need you in this holiday season to give them a gift of your attention. And what is it about? A country seemingly to have an iron control over its people and always had, suddenly erupts. Knowing very well who has and holds the cards, knowing very well who has the big weaponry, and they do it anyway. Time to say goodbye to the old energy. And that's what they're doing. You saw it in Libya? It was a surprise. Isn't it interesting? All erupting together. All happening the year before. The 2012 shift. Dear ones, you are watching what we told you would happen. We told you there'd be small wars about now. And there are. You got 18 years to turn this around, and we say you will, for the potentials are strong. That all of those countries that you're looking at right now with those issues will solve them. And it's not going to last like it is now. The next one to watch is Iran. We're telling you what. And you're going to see why. When the people decide they don't want to be the pariah of earth. When the young people say enough is enough. And it may not be this year or next or even the next. And that depends on the old souls on the planet and what they do next. Dear ones, we need to have you start minding your Akash, and that is to say, to live longer. To pull on those energies of your past life that will make the healings in your body both psychological and physical. That will give you a longer lifespan right now. So that you wake up every morning peaceful. Even if you don't know how you're going to pay your bills tomorrow. That the thing you have today is what those in the desert had as Israelis and Israelites. Knowledge that every day they were going to be taken care of, every day. Just enough for that day. Oh, we've told you that so many times. Are you starting to understand? What you have right now, dear ones, is enough. Every single day. To know that you're going to live peacefully. Healthy. Aging less. And that whatever the problems of 3D are there, you're going to be able to walk through them in a way you haven't so far. You see, it's time to say goodbye. It's time to say goodbye to the old energy. It's time to say goodbye to loneliness because you don't have the hand of God. It's time to start the love affair with your higher self. And when you do that, you'll never ask about the process because you will be the process. We waited a long time for this channel. 23 years. to sit in a place where we can say you did it. Don't watch the news in the same way you have. Don't see the depression of others as the way things are, or the sorrow that is going to be shown to you as the old energy fights and fights and fights to stay alive as the way it is. It's not the way it is. This battle that is before you may actually get worse before it gets better, because you're about ready to change the whole paradigm. And it's not going to happen in a year or 2 or even 4 or 8. It may very well be generationally. Oh, there are those in the room and say, oh, I'm going to miss it. I'm too old. It's not going to happen in my lifetime. I'm sorry for you that you won't be a certain age to see it, but you'll be here if that's okay with you. You're not going to miss anything, old soul. You're the ones who make it work. The cycle of life is the cycle of life. And you're coming right back. You know that, don't you? Even if you say right now, oh, it's a little difficult, I don't think I'll do that. I've had enough. This is the last time. No, it isn't. No, it isn't. You said that last time. No, it isn't. Only the next time you'll be born into a new energy. You're going to have an intuition flash. You're going to remember everything. I promise. You're not going to have to go through the things you did this time. You're not going to have to relearn any of it. It's going to be your second nature. It's going to be intuitive. I've told you that too. And as soon as you're able to talk, you're going to tell your parents who you are. I'm back, you'll say. It's going to be that clear. And they'll know it too. And you're going to have an entire lifetime of understanding what some of you have taken a half a lifetime to find out. And that's the promise we have. The consciousness will be that different, even a few decades from now. It's going to be different. I'll give you my favorite phrase before I close. There come a time when you will look back at an old energy before 2012, and you're going to see the marker that was passed and understand that something profound happened. And you will look at everything from 2012 back as being a marker of time. And it's time to say goodbye to barbaric ways. And you'll wonder, how could we have done that? You'll redefine human nature. And you'll realize at some time in the future what's happening today. I've waited a long time to give that message. Don't look at the news the same way. What's going on right now is a planet flailing against change. And populations all over the planet are standing up and saying, it's time to say goodbye to what used to be and start the love affair to what will. Some of you won't believe me until you see it for yourself. It was in the 80s. At Christmas time. And my partner got chills when he stood in front of his television set. And 2 leaders of profoundly powerful countries were coming together. And they'd made a decision to stop the foolishness. The United States and Russia were going into a new age called perestroika. The first disarmament was being talked about. The end of the Cold War was beginning. Those two men were singing a song, "It's Time to Say Goodbye." My partner stood in disbelief, for that wasn't a prophecy. And he knew it was the beginning of something new. You're going to see these kinds of things, dear ones. You're going to see it soon. And some of you won't even believe it. Former enemies deciding to call it quits and singing the song, "It's Time to Say Goodbye." If you've never heard the song, you should hear it, my partner says. And if you've heard it, now you know what it really means. It's time to say goodbye to the old ways of loneliness, despair, sorrow, and war. This is the marker, and you've made it. Now the next 18 years, survive it, understand it, be peaceful with change, and send energy when it's needed. I'm Kryon. I would not tell you these things if they were not so. And so it is.